right, thank you for joining the Secure the Perimeter podcast. Today we're going to switch it up a little bit, do things a little bit differently. We're here to talk to Sean Manion, the owner of Medium Interactive. And we want to gain some insight on Sean's journey into becoming an entrepreneur and the journey and the mechanisms in which he's used to become successful and grow his own business. So welcome, Sean.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Brent.
Yeah, thanks for being on the Secure the Perimeter podcast. So talking about entrepreneurship, Sean, you obviously have a lot of experience in the way that you grew your own business at Medium Interactive, but talk to me a little bit about your background. Like, what inspired you to start your marketing organization and venture out on your own?
Yeah, so I mean, really I fell into it. I went to a very small technical college here for video and animation. Here in Ashland, Ohio, there's really not much going on here by way of film. That industry just hasn't been here. I didn't really have the means to move to LA, and I had a lot of family here, so that was just out of the picture. And I went into freelancing online. I mean, I just came in at the right moment where a lot of remote work was available, and I picked up a lot of skills along the way, leveraging from video any graphic design skills I had. I picked up web development and was pretty quickly picked up by a software company. They were disrupting the business consultancy space. And at that point, just as a natural learner, have you taken the 5 strengths tests before? Yeah. My top strength is that I'm a learner, and I just love to learn new things. And as I was picked up by this company, I moved from the design side of things into UI, UX, and was straddling between that, building their software, and the marketing side. And the thing in my journey that matters the most is I've had fantastic mentorship along the way. And I don't always realize it in the moment.
Very important, yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And that's where this business was just starting. I think I was employee number 5. And between the mentorship, the marketing, and watching a new business grow, that's been kind of my passion for the last 15 years is examining what does it take to go from idea to actually building something, getting customers. And watching business owners like yourself and the plethora of other companies that we work with, there are absolute formulas to what makes companies succeed and struggle or fail within the first 5 years.
Sure. Yeah, so talk to me about, some of the lessons and the challenges that you faced in becoming an entrepreneur, and, I guess at what point, if I were to back up, at what point did you feel like you wanted to step off into the abyss and become an entrepreneur on your own?
Yeah, for me personally, it's not the same story for everybody, but I had been back and forth between marketing agencies and freelancing for quite a while. So for me, having the ability to see what's out there and then jump back, so sometimes I would have that safety net of employment and then back into freelancing, and it's just a struggle. It's hand and mouth, some people tell me, it's entrepreneurship, right? There's a lot of peaks and valleys, and it just took me a while because I bootstrapped to get that stability, financially, emotionally, etc., so that I didn't need to rely on full-time employment. It took quite a while. And I think one of the biggest challenges was I relied on myself to do everything. And as I've watched different companies grow, or I was an employee at different marketing agencies, I saw, again, that there's a specific formula. There's 3-ish formulas where you have the right people to do the right things in the right position. If you're the only person wearing every single hat, burnout happens. You cap your growth, etc.
Yeah. So, okay. So you've now decided to become an entrepreneur. What challenges did you face immediately after stepping off? You had made a comment about bootstrapping your business, but what challenges did you face, stepping off immediately into the realm of entrepreneurship?
Yeah.
Because you got family, you're dealing with family now, and
Yeah, that's a big part of it. There are a lot of sacrifices you have to make as an entrepreneur, right? I might skip going to the gym, but I have to go to that soccer game, right? And everybody has 168 hours in the week. You just have to find the priorities. Obviously, family is the thing that's always going to be there.
Yeah.
And that's got to be priority number one. That's the whole reason that work happens. Work can be number
Well
two.
said. Yeah.
But yeah. And so some of the challenges are, how do you find the balance of those things? Make sure that this realm is, the business realm is stable, all the clients are happy. How do you keep the family happy? But I mean, the blessing of that challenge is, what it impacts on the younger generation, on the kids, right? They watch, and you got to be a role model and show them, this is how I'm doing it. This is what you can do too, right? Employee is good, but also you have a lot of freedom in, being an entrepreneur. That's the silver lining of that challenge.
Sure. Yeah. In saying that, Sean, you kind of bring to light, the difference between an entrepreneur and a solo entrepreneur. It's very, I still remember, the early years of starting my own organization. It was me and me. And so I started by, I remember the fellow that had started the company with me, he kind of faded off after the first couple of months because he had to have a stable income because he was providing for his family like I was mine, but it didn't work for him the way it worked for me. So you had also made another comment that I think is very relevant.
Let me ask you though, do you feel like you just had more faith in yourself and your ability?
That's a very good question, man, because I think that I had made the full decision to step off and become an entrepreneur, and I quit a very lavish job. I was making six figures as a network engineer, and I just knew that wasn't an alternative option for me. I could have literally rolled up the sidewalks, shut the business down, and went and found another job, but it wasn't interesting to me to do that. So I think the difference between the two, to answer your question more directly, is I made the full decision to, this is what I'm going to do, and I was absolute about that.
There's no plan B.
There's no plan B.
No plan B.
Yeah.
Going back to your question a moment ago, what did it feel like to make that final step off to be the entrepreneur? Yeah, it's no plan B. And having faith in yourself, or like me, I had faith in myself and the ability to figure things out. There's one of the biggest challenges business-wise is I didn't know how to do everything.
Yeah.
But what I got really good at is hiring the right people, right? I've hired probably 200 people in the last 10-ish years when I started to be more of an entrepreneur than a solopreneur. And it's a skill to find those right people. For me, I probably have a different set of criteria than you might. When you hire, are there particular skills that you look for? Is it all skill-based, or is it soft skill-based? They have the aptitude.
We always say that we hire for character, train for skill. What we've found is we've got to establish the baseline. They have to have the baseline metrics to be even part of our organization because we have a certain culture. And I know culture is a buzzword used nowadays that's probably overused or even misused, but we just believe that our culture is the mean average of everyone's attitude in our organization, and it's on the higher level because we always like to enjoy where we work because we spend so much time at work, right? So for us, Sean, the baseline for us is we hire for character, train for skill. You don't necessarily have to have all the skill sets because, quite frankly, young businesses and small businesses, you have to have really, like you had mentioned a second ago, you were very good at hiring key people that were very skilled at what they did. That's almost critical, but in a small business, it's almost more important to have people that have the character and the wherewithal to get through the obstacles and challenges every small business faces. At least that's my experience. So, and in your instance, now you've made the decision, you've become an entrepreneur, and now you're starting to hire employees, right? Like every business, we always talk about, you have to have a growth seed and you plant your seed and then you for me, I had to quickly get into growth mode because I realized that I have literally got to get into growth mode and start to cultivate the field, so to speak, plow the field, however you want to describe it. But we had to get into growth mode, Sean, and then start growing the business. At what point did you begin to then cultivate and grow the business?
Yeah, that is a good question.
Was it like your first year? Were you kind of more solo the first year, 2 years, where you decided to get into the growth mindset and start growing the organization? Because growth means different things for some people. Some people, some people it's revenue.
Yeah. I mean, those things really go hand in hand, where
They do.
I think the big milestone for me, and it stands out very strong in my mind, I have a mental picture of my revenue graph. This is where I decided be more growth mindset and not a solopreneur. I saw my revenue for the last year. It was up and then nothing. It was up and then nothing. And mapping that to my time and involvement, I worked during the downtime and I couldn't do sales at the same time. So there was always a dramatic cross of I'm working, so I'm earning nothing, or I'm getting paid and I'm doing sales, and then I'm working and I'm getting nothing. At that point in time, that image to me is the cornerstone of what the catalyst of growth was for me. Why did I get into growth mode? And from that, I mean, through all of the experiences I've had, I know what it takes to raise seed capital, go through the ABC rounds of funding and whatnot. I'm still hesitant to do that because I'm not in the growth mindset of I need to go raise capital so that I can grow. I've been cautious about how do I have a safety net, have some loans and credit cards and all that never get touched, but they're there in emergency situation. But I just haven't leveraged capital to grow. I've leveraged human capital to grow, and so that it frees me up for more time. And what I hear a lot is the purpose of things like money is for freedom, not to have a number, right? And so I feel like my growth now is different than it used to be. It used to be that I need stability, I need that safety net. And ratcheting up, just like any business owner out there, your mindset for growth is different at different phases. Right now I'm at the point where I want to hire so that I have more time for freedom, so that I can do other things, so that I can serve clients more on a relationship basis and dive deeper into what it means to get their success going. And so growth mindset, it's not just financial, it's personal freedom. How much time can I spend with my family? How much time can I, take a vacation day or just, reset from burnout? How can I get deeper into building things that matter to a wider range of people? And so I feel like that's where my growth is getting right now. And I look forward to seeing what it's going to be in 5 years. It's always changing, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's a key component, what you just said, Sean. I think we should highlight that because I think a lot of young entrepreneurs have the mindset that they're going to start a business and they're going to grow and they're going to blow up overnight and they're going to be a huge success and they're going to be making multi-millions of dollars. And it's really unlikely that that's going to be the case, right? From your own experience and my experience.
Yeah, where do you think they get that concept of that's the model?
I think they hear the Zuckerberg stories, how Zuckerberg started with Facebook and how he kind of blew up, and it just sticks in their brain that can be them as well. And, look, it can happen just like it happened for him, but the reality is more likely than not, you're not going to be an overnight success. It's going to take a lot of arduous uphill climbing and work to get to that level. And going back to the point you had made, and I'd like to highlight this a little bit, you had talked about, the ups and downs and the valleys and peaks in business. As you described, you go from making a lot of money to then zero, a lot of money to then zero. And the point I guess I would like to make from an entrepreneur perspective is, the money that you make, there's a difference between freedom and stability. A lot of people say, I want to be financially stable. Yeah, I get it. But the reality is what is everyone has their own flavor of freedom. Some people's freedom is financial freedom. Some people's definition of freedom is, the flexibility to come and go as they please and not have, the overhead of the financial stress and employees over their head, lingering over their head. And so for me, my definition of freedom, outside of a democratic type of freedom, as we talk about, constitutional rights and Bill of Rights and that kind of stuff, is freedom from debt. Like being debt-free alleviates a lot of stress in a lot of people's lives. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs, and I want to make this point very clear to entrepreneurs, you can go IPO and you can bootstrap your business, but it's not really a good idea to accumulate a bunch of capital and borrowed money and put it around you and then think you're just going to run to the races and be highly successful, right? So to make that point very clear, my definition of financial freedom is to be debt-free. And so I don't like to have a lot of debt. I don't like really debt, and you have to really know your finances. And there's a whole plethora of, I guess, key principles that go along with starting a business, right? And one of the podcasts we had talked about different ways to raise capital for your business. Bootstrapping, going IPO, venture capital money, private equity money. There's all kinds of ways you can raise capital. In your case, you would express that you bootstrap your business, and probably even to now, right? You're cash flowing, you're operating out of your own capital, correct?
Completely debt-free.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. I mean, it's a challenging thing to do. I'm sure in the podcast that you shot or you will shoot, I've heard you express in other conversations that bootstrapping, you just don't recommend it. You've been through it. I think I'm getting to that same point of view. But going back to an earlier point that you made, the young entrepreneurs might think that they can simply easily get to that Zuckerberg state or that Musk state, right? But these people slept under their desks to get where they're at. Yes. Maybe they had some sort of investment like Peter Thiel for Musk, yeah. So they had something to help build them up. But the thing is, I think Musk's first ex-wife said something to the effect of, everybody has an idea and they want $1 billion. Everybody wants $1 billion. But the thing that separates the people who get it from those who don't are the value that they add to multiple people. Instead of, I want $1 billion or $1 million for myself, it's, I want somebody else to have some sort of value, whether that's, in my case in marketing, I want to watch businesses grow. They've got the seed, this idea, I want that to grow. For other people, if they're starting a tech company, then what value does it add outside of your own pocketbook? Yeah. And I don't know, I watch a lot of people who claim they have success, but watch those people. Where are their YouTube videos in 3 years? They're not producing anymore because they may have earned $1 million in a year, but they spent $2 million to get there. And so they're back. So as you were saying, they're in debt. That's financial debt. They have to pay that money back to investors. They may have lost their business because that was part of the debt agreement. So I'm just very cautious about financial debt, right? Outside of that though, just like financial debt, you have interest built in there, or you could damage your relationship. My layer of security is I want my relationships to be as good as possible. And if I'm taking money from people and I can't pay it back, that's going to deteriorate. Not just my credit score, which is so important, but also my standing with other people, right?
Sure.
And so beyond financial debt, do you see any like relational or personal or karmic debt that is out there that, is bad for entrepreneurs?
Absolutely. And we could do a podcast and only talk about, debt that, excuse me, that entrepreneurs accumulate to grow their business, Sean. There is definitely bad debt that you can strap to your company to start. And as Mark Cuban says a lot, anybody that borrows money to start a business is really foolish. He does not recommend that at all. He recommends, basically bootstrapping your own business from your own resources. But to borrow money to go into business, you don't even know what you're getting into. It's much like combat, right? you have no idea what you're getting into until you're in the middle of the firefight. And only then it's too late to realize I'm in it deep, right? And so I always discourage people from borrowing money to start a business. But the first thing I tell people is you have to switch your mindset first. You obviously have been in business long enough for yourself, Sean, that you had the mindset to never quit. You don't have a backup plan, right? And you're still doing it, right? You're still doing it, years later. So what advice or recommendation would you give entrepreneurs who are thinking about starting their own business and going off?
Well, hey, for me, it's a very different story. I am a bad employee. I've been told that.
Sure.
And so, I mean, that wasn't my exit out the door.
That's motivation.
Some people can see it. As an entrepreneur, I hire people and I have to see that in other people as well. Some of my bosses have been my mentors, and it was kind of them to say that to me, Sean, you are not a good employee. Right? It's, you could say it in so many different ways. The connotation is still there. Be an entrepreneur, right? And I'm hearing that in so many ways, not just in words, just the way that conversations go. It's, and anybody out there thinking about starting a business, if you need that stability, get that stability. Have no pride, have no ego. Just do what you need to do to survive and keep your family, at a comfortable level. But that stepping off point to be an entrepreneur really comes down to having faith in yourself and keeping that going forward, right? Some people it's inborn, some people it's grown over time. So it's nature versus
absolutely.
nurture.
Yeah. So love that comment. And so talk to me about the dark days. Obviously as an entrepreneur, we've all had dark days. For you, do you recall specifically some of those dark days and what that looked like? When you seemed like all the odds were stacked against you, as I always say, it feels like you're staring down the barrel of a loaded gun, right? Like you don't know when the gun's gonna go off, and you're just, you feel like it's an uphill fight and there's no end in sight. Talk to me about some of those days for you.
Yeah, I mean, as a business owner, relationships are a big thing. You always have to have those top of mind. Cash flow is a big thing. You always have to have those top of mind. There's a constant worry, maybe just for me, maybe it's for everybody, that someday both feet are going to fall through the floor. And I think a couple of years ago, it was the darkest time that I've had as an entrepreneur, and there were some family things as well that just exacerbated the situation. My identity for the last quarter of a century has been family and work. And my children are older now, right?
Sure.
Silver linings. It's a blessing and a curse, right? They're more mature. They're out there doing their own thing. Family becomes less of a thing during that time in their life. Luckily now they're at a more stable point, and relationships are at a good spot. But as they were, in that teenage phase, transitioning into adulthood, being more socially focused, it's hard as a parent to watch that happen. You want to spend time, but you're just not cool anymore. Right? And so around that time, I actually had a mass exodus of clients. Luckily, I didn't, that didn't affect my team in any way, shape, or form. Everything was still able to keep running, just because I had some reserves, financially, just so everybody was still stable. But that was really the darkest time for me. And, as an entrepreneur or employee or just as a human, the struggle is, what do I do? Do I go find a job? Do I keep plugging away? Do I learn new skills? Do I rely on this? Do I go to the bank? So many questions you have to ask all the time. And so I'm assuming your next question is going to be, how do you get out of that dark? Where is the light at the end of the tunnel? Right?
Let's go there.
Yeah. It's family's always going to be there, right? Sometimes the closer the relationship is, small distances seem vast, right? But it's perspective, right? It's, the kid's just out for a couple hours at the movies with a friend instead of you, right?
Yep.
That's just a natural thing. On the business side of things, every business has their peaks and valleys. Looking back to my old mental picture of peaks and valleys of income, no income, income, no income, it's just another peak and valley. It's just at a more drastic level, which is natural. I just have to keep thinking to myself, one, it's natural. This is part of the process.
The process, yeah.
Yes, sir. This
Love
is
that.
growth, right? Shed that skin and find new ways.
Yeah. So this is all great content. If you're out there and you're watching this podcast, I love a lot of things that Sean's saying, and to illuminate some of the points he's trying to make. One of the things that Sean talks about a lot is the peaks and the valleys. And right now we just summarized, what the dark days look like. Every entrepreneur goes through dark days, and so you have these series of doubts, right? You doubt yourself, you doubt the process, you doubt the vision, you doubt the end result. And so, again, I go back to, I feel like, the deck is stacked against me, right? I'm up against all the odds, and I'm staring down the barrel of a loaded gun. And for you, it was, you were going through the experience of seeing your kids transition, and as an entrepreneur and a parent, it was like a double impact on you, because it not only affected you professionally, but it affected you personally, right? And so you had talked about, the way that you got through that was you had to get yourself into perspective. I talk a lot about, you always have to recalibrate. You have to reassess. You have to do a, whatever people want to call it, a reboot, a soft reboot, a hard reset. You always have to calibrate. And I think it's important for people out there, entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs, if you're thinking about becoming an entrepreneur, you have to calibrate yourself a lot. You have to figure out where you're at, what the baseline is, and where you go from there, right? And so, and I know for myself, Sean, I experienced those dark days as well. A lot of pressure, employee pressure, financial pressure. I started the business with a partner, and then I found myself running solo a couple months later. A lot of, I felt like when I stepped off into the realm of entrepreneurship, I was facing those challenges almost immediately. And it was the, what did I just do moment? Like, I just quit a 6-figure job to do this. Was I crazy?
Scary.
Am I crazy? Am I really not, am I really off track with my assessment and wanting to become an entrepreneur? And so I doubted myself quite a bit. So for you, it sounds like, you had experienced the dark days of entrepreneurship, but it was from a family perspective, which is very interesting. That's not usually what a lot of entrepreneurs say. They typically say that it's, they hit the end of the wall with their working capital, they ran out of cash, 5 of their big customers just left, and so they go through those hardships, from that angle.
Yeah, but I feel like I can compartmentalize things pretty well, but the whole reason I do business is family. And work and family has been my identity for a quarter of a century, right? That is more than half of my life. And so when that fundamental rock is shifting, eroding is the wrong word, but changing
Shifting,
through the
sure.
times,
Yeah.
time changes things, right?
Yep.
And how do you recalibrate is the word used, and I like that a lot. How do you bring that back down to zero? And for me, I think it's maybe for you as well, but it's perspective, right? All of these things are in your life for a reason. These challenges, I think biblically even, these challenges are here because you are capable of handling them and enduring and getting through it. And so just as much as those rocks are going to, shift under your feet, it might make a more stable footing for later so that you can grow higher. And so that's true in business, that's true in family, that's true in any relationship or any situation that you're in. One of my employees, he used to be a boxer, right? And so I love his mentality. Every time I throw a challenge at him, he's gonna come back with, all right, pressure makes a diamond, right? And so not everybody has that mindset, but it's awesome to see this sports-minded guy understand that these changes, they're rough, but I'm going to build muscle. I'm going to be able to climb from that.
Love it. Love it. And I think you're right. Again, Sean, you illuminate a lot of and demonstrate a lot of different points to talk about. But we talk about challenges, and I think the differentiator between entrepreneurs who fail and quit to entrepreneurs who fail but then succeed are how they process those challenges. And a lot of times, you know, we all have to be reminded, how am I going to process this challenge, right? A failure, for instance, a customer that's upset, or a product that has an issue. Like, instead of saying, oh, woe is me, and pull the victim card, what I like to do now, years into being an entrepreneur, is how can I grow from this? How can I learn from this and convert this epic potential failure into success?
But that wasn't day one.
That wasn't day one.
You learned that. What do you think helped you learn that along the way?
Tenacity.
Yeah.
Tenacity. Literally, either I'm going to fail and crumble and fall apart, or I'm going to get up and do something about this. And, you know, from my background being in the military, I just had that's how I'm wired, right? It's my innate nature. I default to that mentality because I've had to face it so many times. So being in the military served me well when I got into the realm of entrepreneurship, Sean, because I had to figure out, okay, two things are going to happen. Either I'm going to fall apart and let this all, go to pieces, or I'm going to do something about it, and I'm going to convert this energy. Later on, as I said, being an entrepreneur, I've figured out a way to convert it and make it a positive energy versus negative energy all the time. I don't like to play the victim card, and I definitely don't like to play the blame game and, point fingers at everybody else on why it's their fault, not your fault. I always internalize it. In fact, nowadays, I always default to, I must have done something wrong. I default to, I made a mistake, I misunderstood, because to me, it allows me to automatically default to how can I convert this into positive energy and grow from this experience. Because we all fall on our face and we all make huge mistakes. But it's the one who keeps getting back up and keeps getting back in the fight. We've all seen the movie about, the underdog fighter that gets in the ring and gets his ears knocked off, but he keeps getting up. I mean, the Rocky movies were a perfect demonstration of that. When Rocky's getting his head knocked off and he just keeps getting up, and I want to say it was Carl Weathers, in the movie. He turns around and he sees Rocky, and you just see the expression on his face just go blank, like, I cannot believe this guy's getting back up after that. That's the way you got to be as an entrepreneur. So, last question I would have for you, Sean, is talk to me a little bit about your vision for your own organization, or just the future of where you see yourself in 5 years.
I think in 5 years, my mindset is going to shift a lot. Just in this conversation, I've learned a lot, and this is going to be a big rung in my ladder to think about what is growth like in years to come. And for me, I'm not going to put a dollar amount on it. I'm not going to put a team size on it. I'm not going to put out how many YouTube videos I'm going to have or whatever. For me, it's how much impact I can have on somebody else's life. And so I think my goal for the next 5 years is more to hire some people who I can help with that. There's an economic term for this, but it's upward mobility, where somebody has that, as we talked about hiring before, has that core value. They have the aptitude, but they might have some struggles along the way. I want to help somebody move up, because that's kind of what happened in my life. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, and you early on in this episode, you had talked about you want to be a value to somebody else, and I think that is absolutely critical in business. To me, relationships are everything in business, because without the relationships, you got no revenue, you got no customers.
Yes.
You just got people, right? And I just believe relationships are everything. So I definitely appreciate you sharing your experiences and some of your own insights on, becoming an entrepreneur and sustaining the title of entrepreneur, right? I mean, you're doing it now, and it's very valuable. And if we can be a resource for you guys out there, if you're an entrepreneur if you're young in business, or if you've just, you just picked up this channel and you want to learn some extra things, I think we could, be a resource for you and offer extra value. Thank you guys for joining the Secure the Perimeter podcast, and hopefully in the next episode we'll have some more good stuff for entrepreneurs and the journeys that other entrepreneurs have shared. So thanks for joining.